So there was a question in the comments on the last video. There were many questions, but I picked this one out. So basically, it's quite long. I'll just summarise it and then I'll read the last bit, which is actually the question. He's basically asking about hypnotherapy. He's asking, like, what do I think about hypnotherapy? Does it work? But then this is the question. Do you think there can be specific things that happen to create a negative outlook in the brain and we're unconscious to them? Do you think we can get over our historical trauma without learning what exactly it was that was caused? That is why I mentioned hypnotherapy and regression stuff. Obviously, these are known for uncovering things in the subconscious. Okay, so yes, I think I've only used hypnotherapy once or twice. It was when I was still very retarded, and I feel like most people. Yeah, this is quite a big statement and generalization, but I think most people who use hypnotherapy, they're still coming from the fix me point of view. You know, like, we're so trained to use doctors who give us pills to just cover up the root cause and maybe help with the symptoms, but actually just cause way more symptoms. Like, we're so used to this society of external fixers, of not doing the work, of not feeling self, of not feeling emotion. And I think what happens when we start to wake up from all the lies and we start to see the possibility of alternative therapy having some benefit, then we go to the ones that are most similar, you know, the ones that are like, can you fix me? And I think this is why the first thing that most people seem to accept is acupuncture, because there's some science behind it, because you can explain the meridians of the body to them and it's all very scientific. So people go for that. And then I think hypnotherapy is kind of like the first alternative woo-woo type therapy, because again, it can be kind of explained scientifically, and more than that, you don't have to do anything. You can just lie there and be somebody else does the work. You know, people are so addicted to other people doing the work, because that's all our society offers. That's all our brain even knows before we, you know, start doing the work and waking up. I feel that's kind of where this person who's asked the question is at. They refer to the brain. Do you think things that happen can create a negative outlook in the brain? Well, I think they create an energetic kink, a trap, a block in the nervous system and the chakras and the energy body, much more than the brain. I think the brain just reacts to all that. But again, it's the programming. We're so programmed to believe that this brain thing is everything. Well, actually, this is the issue. This is the unconsciousness. Being trapped in the head, being trapped in what we call the mind, that doesn't even exist. It's just a stream of consciousness. But when we have our presence here behind the eyes, this is complete unconsciousness. This is the opposite of embodiment. This is the opposite of clearing your channels, you could call them chakras, to allow consciousness to flow through you, to allow intuition and wisdom to just be spurted out of you without you even thinking. You know, it's thinking that's the problem. It's having your presence here. I'm not knocking hypnotherapy. Yeah, so I did it when I was just like, fix me. I went to a hypnotherapist to stop me from smoking. You know, there was no concept of dealing with the underlying issues and emotions that I was running away from that were causing me to smoke. No, it was just like, oh, can you fix me? Can you give me this magic pill that isn't a pill, but, you know, that's the same mentality that I'm using. So yes, absolutely, I think it can unlock things from the subconscious. I'm all for it. But I think it's a real baby step. I think it's, and I'm not knocking it, but it's bloody country, man. Be wrong, I think somebody who's, you know, very enlightened and done a lot of work might use hypnotherapy, but I don't know if they would. I wouldn't. You know, if somebody really wise was a hypnotherapist and was like, I'll offer you this and I think it could really help, I wouldn't say no. I'm not against it, but it certainly wouldn't be my go-to genre. Yeah, I think it's for those who are just starting to seek and just starting to accept alternative therapies. The second part of the question is more interesting for me. Do you think we can get over historical trauma without learning what exactly has caused it? So this is him starting to understand. This is him starting to go away from analysing and towards feeling. So yes, absolutely. It's quite a dangerous one. Like, we are, you know, you see a lot of people in this work who will, you know, it could be anything. They see a therapist, not a standard therapist, because they'd just be too scared to even say anything. But you know, I'll speak about myself. So I was working with this woman in Thailand who was, you know, essentially a witch. She was amazing in many ways, and she knew so much about me. Like, it was incredible. It was jaw-dropping. You know, you'd go to her and she'd know what you'd done that morning, or she'd know things about your past. But then she started telling me that I'd been abused as a child, you know, sexually. And you know, I had so much trust and faith in this woman, I didn't really question it. And she ended up telling me, and it's really bad, she ended up telling me that it was my dad. It was about a 2-month period where I really believed that my dad had done something awful to me, which it didn't happen. It didn't happen. Why am I bringing this up? I think it's something around, yeah, when we're coming from the mind and we're trying to find answers, you know, it's dangerous. Like, we can end up making stuff up, and it can end up feeling very believable. However, yeah, so what it's really about is surrendering. It's all about surrendering. So I feel like the person who's made this comment, no criticism at all. It's just, you know, speaking into the reality of where people are speaking from. It's not about better or worse. Yeah, they're starting to make the shift from analytical searching to surrendering, to feeling, to opening. So I refer to these things as stories. The story we have of ourselves, the story we have of life. You know, we grow up with all these stories that are told to us by our parents, that we make up to make us understand who we are. But they're all just stories. I remember I was working with someone, we were on plant medicine, and her brother had abused her as a child when they were both children. You know, it's not even about shaming the brother, it's, you know, it's just kid stuff. And she had this story of, my brother's amazing, he didn't abuse me, it was just, you know, she was basically defending her brother. Like, she couldn't even get to the reality of what had happened and the effect it had had on her and how she was now acting as an adult. So she had this story of, my brother's amazing and he didn't abuse me. But she would say, but he did, you know, stick his finger here, and but he didn't abuse me. It was a story. You know, it wasn't true. He absolutely did abuse her, use her sexually. And that's not to make him wrong. Like, there was stuff going on for him that caused him to do that. And you know, I just don't believe in shame at all. I just believe in, you know, this is what happened, why did it happen, there's no point shaming it. And I remember her finally, I mean, it took 5 hours of, like, you know, gentle coaxing and not so gentle at times. And I kept referring to story. I was like, yeah, so this is your story. Anyway, she broke through, and like tears and everything. She was like, oh my God, my brother abused me. And then we went into, you know, his story and why it's not about, you know, this doesn't mean you've got to now be really angry with him and shame him, like, but it does need to be acknowledged. Like, your inner child needs to acknowledge this. She was showing up as an adult with like OCD and massive control issues, and to be honest, she was a dickhead. She was a really nasty person to be around. You know, she'd interrupt you all the time. She had to be right all the time. She had to control things all the time. And this is because she'd experienced such such lack of control, I should say, as a child. You know, she'd forcibly been raped, essentially. So now she was trying to control everything. Anyway, when she broke through, she was just like, after, you know, a while, she was just like, story, I get what you mean now, I get why you kept saying story. And I remember when I first met my amazing peyote shaman, he used the word story a lot. We all have these stories. And it just didn't even really register with me. I remember there was this moment when I realised like how deluded I was and how I'd been holding on to a story. But I got it. I was like, oh, that's why he uses the word stories. Get back to the question, do you think we can heal things without knowing how they happened? Well, it's essential. That is real healing. Like once you get past the analytical stories, having to have stories about everything, having to work everything out, that's when the real healing can begin. Because there's going to be so much that you don't have any memories over, like stuff that happened in the womb. You know, just in being born, how traumatic is being born. You go from this warm, protected, hopefully loving place. You know, that's your world, that's your whole existence. And then suddenly you're in this external world and it's a hospital and the doctors, like the dad throws you in the air, the doctor spanks your ass. Like, can you imagine coming out of this warm, comfy heaven and just getting your ass spanked and then some retard being like, whoa, my boy, yeah, woo. You know, highly traumatic. But you're not going to remember any of that. You're not going to have a story around any of that. You know, this is going to be feeling, this is going to be in the energetic body. So yeah, to feel is to heal, not to analytically understand something in the brain. And this is how we start the embodiment journey, by feeling ourselves. And until you're embodied, you're completely traumatized, you're completely dissociated. You're in the mind, floating around with all your stories, trying to analyze everything. And yeah, the mind is a painful place. The mind isn't where your presence is designed to be. It's certainly not in communication with the higher self, with God, with nature. You know, you're very much coming from this egoic need to control your surroundings, be part of society to survive, rather than just feel, surrender, let go and flow. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know in the comments. Ask me more questions in the comments because it really does help me to do videos. And do like, do subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Big love. And share it with somebody who's ready for this message. Share it with somebody who's seeking but still analysing. Give them a chance, let them know.